Hi guys, welcome back to Fur Friday. Today we're going to be concentrating on longish wavy hair on these beautiful dogs that you're going to see pop up in a minute. The photo was lent to me by Maya. I think it's Isaacson. Apologies if I have got that wrong. And yeah, we're tackling this type of fur. As I've said in the previous video, I want to have a bigger range as possible, not necessarily to teach you what is right and wrong, but just to show you how I would tackle something like this. They may not look exactly like the photo by the time we get to the end of it, but it looks like it's supposed to look and gives the effect that we are after. I'd already put a coating of Payne's Grey down because in true Bonnita Doodle style I forgot to press the record button, so we didn't miss much, but we did miss a little bit. So I just coated a little bit down. I've also put some indentation down on a couple of areas, not many, but I have done a couple of those. I wish I'd showed you, but it's not Bonnita Doodles video if I haven't forgot to press record or do something technically wrong. So yeah, we've got a bit of a tri-colour going on here as well. So the colours we're using are the Van Dyke Brown, the Cinnamon, the Dark Sepia, Payne's Grey, Cold Grey 1, Cold Grey 2. So the Cinnamon and the Van Dyke Brown give that really nice warm fur that you can see just on the bottom right hand side and sort of the middle just under the white part of the fur on the left. And I actually have a feeling that the little area at the top is the dog crossing over from the other side. So I probably didn't choose the best snippet to draw from, but hey ho. I did bring in the cream, and that's to help do the blending because there are some quite light smooth blending areas. And again, I've put the main reference up as well as the snippet because the snippet doesn't always look much when it's out of context, so I've given you both there. The main trick with wavy hair is following the direction that you see in your reference picture. A lot of people try and overcomplicate it, and it really is as simple as following the shape. So when you get your line work down, doesn't matter how you do it, just make sure that you've got enough of a guide that you can see exactly where your fur is moving to, the direction it's going in. And just by simply getting your base work down first, it will make a huge difference to when you come to do the colour on top. Don't be afraid to draw around it if you need to, just don't go very heavy. As long as you can blend that, then it's fine to do. You need to keep track of where, especially all the white wispy bits that we had on this particular bunch of fur, you need to keep track of where the majority of those are, because you don't want to build your layers too much over the top. When you come back with an eraser later on, it's much easier to clean those areas out. Keep all that area white. Just clean it out as and when you need to, and then you don't lose where those white straggly bits of fur have gone. The colour changes slightly throughout the video because it's really difficult when you're working at this scale to get things exact. So as I say, a lot of these are not going to be exact to the picture. It's here to show you the method rather than the accuracy, if that makes any sense. So we use things like the Cold Grey 2, the Cinnamon and the Van Dyke Brown to get in the colours that we need. The Cold Grey 2 and the Cold Grey 1 are mainly used on the white patch of fur on his chest. The Dark Sepia is used to bring in some of the warmer areas of the grey black fur that you see. And yeah, the Cold Grey 1 we use a lot for the blending over the white patches of his fur. The white is actually really subtle, and there is a little hint of blue in there, but again, this is where you can choose whether or not to add certain colours into your portrait. They never have to be exactly the same as the reference photo when it comes to little subtle differences like that. The main colour of the portrait, yes, you need to get that right, but little differences, just check. If you don't feel it needs it, don't add it in. It's artistic preference at the end of the day. As I said, try and draw around some of those lines, but don't do it with a heavy line because you need to be able to blend it out and you need to make it subtle. So you'll see me quite often draw around where the shapes are, and then I'll spend time to blend that out so it doesn't look so strange. I do use the Tombow quite a lot, and it is worth getting yourself a fine eraser, whether it's an electric one or a pencil style like this, because it does help you get in and get some fine details. Depending on how much of the wax you've got down, you can then bring in your slice cutter, your blade, and just scrape some off, which I do a bit later on in the video. So as with all the fur tutorials, and you're going to hear me repeat this a lot, so I apologise, everything about fur is layering. Don't just stick to 2 layers and think that you're done. Even on the lightest areas, it still needs layering. So you need to really think about softening your shadows, softening your highlights if you need to, you know, get some basic base layers down, and then you can work your fur over the top of that. Now there's not a lot with regards to trying to get fur strokes in the detail with regards to the dark side. It's only really on the left hand side where we go from the dark into the orangey colour, and then we fade down into what looks like a grey colour. I'm being really technical here. So really you're going from your Payne's grey, you're going to your cinnamon, and then you're going down into your cold greys 2s and your dark sepia. So that's what we're looking at there. So as I say, I'm blending out with the cold grey 2. There is quite a lot. You can see there is quite a lot of cold grey and bluish tones within the fur on the patch on the front of the chest, and that's because his chin, or her chin, is casting a shadow on that chest hair. You've also got the ear from the dog next door, which is also casting a shadow. Now because we've picked the lower portion, you can see that it goes right up underneath her chin, and there's quite a lot of fluff coming out of there as well, but I chose the longer part because I thought it might be easier for you to see the contrast between the dark fur underneath and the light fur on the top. The chest hair still has directional flow to it, so it's important for you to keep the directional flow, and just use that by using the motion with your hand to get those directional fur strokes in place. If you get any direction wrong, that's where things go fundamentally bad, and the reference pictures start to look skew, and the face doesn't look correct, and just things look off. So the most important thing, I think, actually first to colour, because you know, even if you're working in graphite, if you do not get your fur direction right, it will put the whole thing off. So that's the most important thing to concentrate on. If you're practicing, maybe even practicing graphite, you don't actually have to do it in colour pencil. It's just that people like colour pencil portraits, so that's why I chose to do it this way. The bit I'm doing at the moment, I'm just weaving in little bits of dark underneath, because what I don't want to do is I don't want to have to really go in with my eraser afterwards and pull out any highlights. I want to be able to get as much of that underneath as I can while keeping the fur bits clean on the right hand side. What you don't want to do is get to the point where you've actually gone over so much of the white fur that it's impossible to bring it back. I always prefer to leave negative space when it comes to doing these types of fur. It's much easier to add in darker detail later than it is to try and bring back your highlights. So really keep that in mind. Try and keep as much negative space there as you can. So again, building up, blending in between, darkening now some of those areas. So I'm going in with the Van Dyke brown, darkening the areas underneath, making sure I get the shading right, and I'm pretty sure I come up to a point in a minute where I actually start reducing some of the colour on the our left hand side, and bringing in more of that warmer tone. There are a few sort of finer bits, and there's a little bit of tweaking that I need to do on some of the larger patches that I've made a little bit smaller than they should be. So you'll see that that alters as you go through the end of the video. I'm probably not going to chat through much more of this one. I think I've pretty much gone through everything that I can. So yeah, the main points are is keep your white areas as negative space to begin with. Layer in patches. Don't worry about getting your first strokes up unless they're truly obvious until your last few layers. Really observe shapes in your white fur area and don't be afraid to go darker than you think you need to. Another top tip is squint. If you squint, stupid camera face now, if you squint at your work and then your reference, you'll be able to actually reduce it from being an image to just being shade, and then you'll be able to see what areas need to go darker and what needs to go lighter. It's a really good thing to do. So don't walk around with your eyes half shut, just have a quick look at your reference picture that way and you'll be amazed how much difference it actually makes to how much darker you can go. I'm going to stop yabbering. I'm going to let you watch the rest with the music going on leisurely in the background, and I shall see you guys in number 4 and on the next video.